What would you do if you lost your job tomorrow? Are you able to handle 5 to 6 months of unemployment without getting into debt?
I just can't do it, Captain.
Most Canadians can't. In this video, we're going to cover everything you need to know about emergency funds. What are they? How much should you save for? How to build one from scratch? Where to keep it, and when to use it. If you don't want to be one unexpected event away from financial disaster, make sure you watch this video till the end. What is an emergency fund? An emergency fund is a stash of money set aside to cover unexpected expenses or situations like job loss or you can't work because of an illness or injury. A proper emergency fund keeps you prepared for any situation that could throw your life off course. Think of it as self-insurance. Instead of relying on a credit card or even worse, a payday loan, you rely on yourself. The pros of an emergency fund include peace of mind, better sleep at night, sense of control and confidence, reduced money stress, which leads to less relationship strain, job and moving flexibility, more opportunities, more riskier opportunities, and can help protect your long-term goals and avoid debt. The downsides, it's tempting to spend, it's hard to build up, it loses value due to inflation and opportunity costs. If you're living without an emergency fund, you're walking a tightrope with no safety net. And in Canada right now, that's a dangerous game to play. Whether it's job cuts, wild weather, or unexpected expenses, it's not a question of if, but when. Your emergency fund is the line between chaos and calm. How much should you save? Let's break it down into two stages: the starter fund and the fully funded emergency fund. The starter emergency fund has always been $1,000, popularized in the 90s by Dave Ramsey as the first baby step, but because of inflation, I believe the more appropriate amount is $2,000. This isn't your fully funded emergency fund, it's your first small win to keep you in the game. This gives you breathing room and can keep you from falling into debt when smaller emergencies pop up. The goal with the starter emergency fund is to save up for it as fast as possible. Once you've hit that $2,000 goal, the next step is to build a fully funded emergency fund. The general rule of thumb is to save between 3 to 6 months worth of essential living expenses. But what does essential actually mean? This means cutting out everything unnecessary and only spending on essential expenses like your housing, groceries, utilities, minimum debt payments, transportation, and insurance. In order to see how much money you need for a month of expenses, you'll need to create a budget. List all your monthly expenses and cut out the unnecessary for the bare bones budget. Now times your bare bones budget by how many months you want your emergency funds to last. For example, if your bare bones budget is $3,000 per month, you should aim for $9,000 to $18,000. If your job is unstable or you're self-employed, you may want even more, like 6 to 12 months of essential living expenses. 1 year should be the max emergency fund. After that, you may have too much and start to lose out on opportunity costs. If you want to learn more about creating a budget, check out the video up here or look for the link in the video description below. Now let's look at all the factors that will help determine exactly how many months your emergency fund should last. Do you have kids or other dependents? Do you have one car or more, or car payments? Do you have a mortgage or rent? Do you have other debt obligations? Do you have health issues or poor insurance coverage? How stable is your job? Are you in a high turnover industry? Are there many job opportunities? Is your income commission-based or seasonal? And are you the sole earner in your household? The more financial obligations or risk you have, the bigger your emergency fund should be. Let's look at a few examples. If you're a dual income household with high incomes and low expenses, with good job stability, with minimal debt obligations, no kids or pets, and are very healthy, 3 months of living expenses may be all you need to feel at ease. Or maybe you're a single income household with the average salary, expenses, debt obligations, and have 2 kids. 6 months of living expenses will make you less vulnerable. What about if you're a single parent of 3 kids and your main source of income is working at a car manufacturer plant, and there's talks that there will be closing more plants soon? You don't have much education, so other job opportunities are limited. In this situation, 12 months of living expenses may be enough to support you and your family till you find your next employment opportunity. There is no exact formula to determine how much your emergency fund should be, but a good indicator is that you sleep better at night. You don't feel anxious every time your car makes a weird noise or when your boss schedules a surprise meeting. If you feel calm knowing you could survive a few rough months without panicking, you're likely in a good spot. How do you build your emergency fund? As for your starter $2,000 emergency fund, you want this as fast as possible, like in a month. The quickest way to do this is to sell off unwanted or unused items. This could be that extra set of rims you had from an old car, those old cribs or strollers you kept just in case you have another one, or maybe you can sell off some of those old Pokemon cards you haven't seen in years. Some of them being worth a lot of money now.
Oh my God!
You may also want to consider selling items that don't really depreciate once used. Meaning if you buy it for $50, you can easily sell it again for $50 next year. This can be workout equipment, hand and power tools, heavy equipment, furniture, bicycles, kayaks, firearms, jewelry, books, musical instruments, and baby gear. Once you have everything you want to sell, post them on platforms like Facebook Marketplace. The next thing to do is a no-spend challenge. This is a challenge where you only buy the essentials for a set period of time, basically relying on a bare bones budget. So no takeout food, no alcohol, no excessive clothing, no impulse Amazon buys, no gifts, only the essentials you need to survive and your debt obligations. The most common goal is for 30 days. If that's too hard, do the 7-day challenge. And if you're really up for it, do the 1-year no spend challenge. If you're serious about getting your starter emergency fund as soon as possible, do this challenge till you achieve your goal. The next thing to do is find ways to increase your income. The quickest way to do this is to ask for more hours at work. If that's not possible, get yourself a part-time job in the evenings or weekends. I remember one year I was working full-time doing rebar. I would be off at 3 and I had weekends free. At the time, I had nothing better to do, so I decided to get a part-time job at Canadian Tire. It was minimum wage and I didn't really need the money, but it was a bit of extra income, so why not? Or you start a side hustle or side gigs. This can be as simple as finding old steel drums and turning them into burn barrels. I made $350 last month selling burn barrels and only took me a total of 3 hours to make. There's plenty of ways to increase your income. Think of dog walking, mowing lawns, Uber, skip the dishes, junk removal, or tutoring. This doesn't need to be a permanent thing. You are trying to get your starter emergency fund as fast as possible, and extra income will help greatly. Once you have your starter emergency fund, you can ease off the gas and slowly build up your fully funded emergency fund. Create discretionary income in your budget and allocate those funds towards your emergency fund. You can also automate your savings by setting a specific amount to be automatically transferred to a savings account every time you get paid. Where do you keep your emergency funds? The traditional spot to keep your emergency funds is in a high interest savings account, preferably one with the highest interest rate. This will likely mean a different financial institution from your checking account. If you check out highinterestsavings.ca, you can find the current best rates around. What I do is move my emergency funds around from Tangerine to Simply. They both offer promotional rates throughout the whole year. You will also need to consider that interest is taxable in a high interest savings account. To avoid these taxes, you can use a tax advantage account like the TFSA, but you need to consider that a TFSA only has a certain amount of contribution room, so you can only deposit in a certain amount. And if you start investing, it's better to save your TFSA room for assets like stocks. That being said, you can hold your emergency funds in your TFSA for now till you need that contribution room for investments. I also like to keep a small portion of my emergency fund in physical cash. This gives me the quickest access to cash in case of an emergency. And there's many situations where you can't just swipe a card, like a power outage, network outage, or frozen bank accounts. It's just an extra layer of security. Now, it's not recommended to keep your emergency fund in riskier assets like stocks, ETFs, or bonds. If you are looking for a higher return, consider keeping half of your emergency funds in short-term GICs, cashable GICs, or even high-interest savings ETFs. The point of emergency fund isn't to grow your wealth. It's to protect your wealth. Your money may be losing its value in a savings account due to inflation, but you will lose more money if you sell off stocks when the market is down and interrupt its compound growth. And 100% of the time during market crashes, there will be job losses. So imagine needing to sell your stocks being down 20%, and on top of that, you lost your job and no one is hiring.
I'm gonna jump!
Next, let's discuss which order should you allocate your money. No matter what, first before anything, the starter emergency fund. Next is split between paying off debt versus the fully funded emergency fund. If the debt is high interest like a credit card, it's more favorable to lean towards paying off the debt first. If the interest rate on the debt is low like a mortgage or a car loan, you're better off funding the emergency fund. And if you have debts that are in between high and low, you can consider contributing to both at the same time. The split will depend on how much debt you have and the type of debt. If you have a debt like a line of credit, it makes more sense to pay off the line of credit first because at the very least, you can use the line of credit in case of an emergency. Now, what about investing? Investing shouldn't be considered until you get your starter emergency fund and pay off all your high interest debt. You can start investing while paying off low interest debt and building your fully funded emergency fund. Although it's a bit more risky to invest, if it's going to take you a few years to have your emergency fund fully funded, that's time in the market you will miss. But if you can have the emergency fund fully funded in a year, it might make more sense to build the emergency fund first before investing. In the ideal world, the order goes $2,000 starter emergency fund, pay off high interest debt, build up emergency fund first, then invest and save for other financial goals while paying off your other debts. This order poses the least amount of risk. So when should you use your emergency fund? The first reason to use your emergency fund is for unexpected costs. This can be something small like a tire blown out, your microwave gave out, a tooth filling fell out, or your phone is lost and needs replacement.
iPhone 14?
Or the cost can be more significant like an emergency vet visit, major car repair, emergency dental work, emergency travel for a family issue or funeral, funeral costs, major home repair, medical emergencies not covered by insurance, legal fees, and divorce. The next reason to use your emergency fund is if you're unable to work or you lost your job. This can be due to a sickness, injury, or you're recovering from a surgery, or you need to handle a family emergency. I've worked with fellas who were dying with the flu, but wouldn't take a day off work because they couldn't afford it. Even if you have kids and they get sick, you can't bring them to daycare or school. Someone needs to take time off work to care for them. And depending where you live, snow days can cause you to miss even more work. Now, what about your employer? Maybe they don't have enough hours to keep you busy. Maybe there's a shortage of work and layoffs. You might get fired. There might be a strike or labor dispute. They could go out of business. They could be affected by flooding or wildfires, or a pandemic may cause businesses to shut down. You could lose your job in an instant and be no fault of your own. And if that's the only source of income and you're a single household earner, the emergency fund will be there for you till you find your next job. What doesn't qualify as an emergency? Expected expenses. This can look like birthdays, holidays, Christmas, back to school shopping, weddings, sales, vacations, property taxes, tax bills, home maintenance, car maintenance, and sometimes even repairs. Example, needing to get new tires because they are bald is not an emergency. It's expected that tires will need replacing, so it's an expected expense. But let's say you just replace your tires and then you hit a pothole and pop a tire, then that's when you can use your emergency fund. Everything you own has a life expectancy. Your car, your shingles, your fridge, your phone. So if your 20-year-old fridge gives out, it's not really an emergency. It's expected that it will give out one of these days. So how do you handle these expected costs? Sinking funds. These funds are for planned but irregular expenses like your Christmas, your property taxes, and whatnot. You know these expenses are coming, so you can reduce financial shock by being prepared with sinking funds, which you can learn all about by watching the video on the right of the screen. See you there.